Greetings and welcome back to our Chats with Emily, our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are at poem 6 of the Johnson edition. Frequently the words are pink. The assumptions here are that you've been following our stuff at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist, and that I'm hopeful that you've been introduced already to our introductory lecture, and then we just finished with poem number 5, I Have a Bird. Now the background information here is, I think, remarkable. Emily is going to often play around with the personification of nature, and the cyclical nature of nature is going to be central to our reading. So many of these early poems get us ready to read so many of the later poems, I believe, and so as we get into this, we'll enjoy that. Let's enjoy poem 6. Frequently, the woods are pink, frequently are brown. Frequently the hills undress behind my native town. Oft a head is crested I was wont to see, and as oft a cranny where it used to be. And the earth, they tell me, on its axis turned, wonderful rotation by but 12 performed. Now notice the use of the word frequently here 3 times, this anaphoric thing that we've seen with as well Walt Whitman. Notice the way in which she will select a word that will all of a sudden kind of go, wait, what? Notice, frequently the woods are pink, that is to say, in the spring. We think of Chaucer's opening lines of the general prologue of Canterbury Tales, right? Frequently, notice she leaves out the woods, but just are brown. In other words, yeah, we go from spring to autumn, fall, no question. Frequently, and this is one of the early poems in the collection, where Emily does something that makes, especially readers of her own day, kind of sit up and go, wait, what? Notice, frequently the hills undress. The personification here is remarkable, of maybe a person, maybe a woman, taking off a garment behind my native town. In other words, there's the woods are very near and dear to Emily. She spent a lot of time out there walking as a child. Oft a head is crested I was wont to see. In other words, the mountains as pictured as having heads and maybe even hatted, right? I was wont to see, and is oft a cranny where it used to be a crack or a cranny, and this idea of peeking through is so pure Emily. And the earth, and then there's the dash, they tell me, the dash. Now, obviously the antecedent pronoun they is fascinating here. Who is the they? Emily loves to do this in her poetry, where she almost seems at times to be making fun of the experts, making fun of those who were her teachers, making fun of those who were just going to tell her about the world, because she's obviously going to experience the world, and that's what makes her such a beloved poet for us, doesn't it? And the earth, they tell me, on its axis turn. In other words, I've been told that the reason that we have to have, it's almost like a return back to the Persephone myth of the Greeks, right? The reason that we have this seasonal stuff is some story that got told, and I think in some ways, and Emily is so subversive in this way, she's almost like joining together the new science of obviously the earth spinning on its axis and all of that, with the Persephone myth of way back when. In other words, there's a story that they tell as to why this kind of thing happens. And then she follows it up with the word wonderful, which is one of her favorite words. It will take us to a poem that we will meet later in more detail, poem 483, a solemn thing within the soul to feel itself get ripe. And golden hang while further up the maker's ladder stop, and in the orchard far below you hear a beam drop. Oh, wonderful to feel the sun still toiling at the cheek you thought was finished, cool of eye, critical of work. He shifts the stem a little to give your core a look, but solemnness to know your chance in harvest moves a little nearer every sun, the single to some lives. We'll come back to this poem. I just want to emphasize her use of the word wonderful and then the word rotation. The idea, and notice the last 3 lines all ending with exclamation points. Some have had a problem with Emily doing so many exclamation points, like really seriously, please. I think though that she wants to pass on the enthusiasm, the energy, and she uses the exclamation point to do it. Notice, wonderful rotation by but 12 performed. Obviously, the months of the year, unless you want to read this at a symbolic level, and we're talking now maybe about the disciples of Christ and the sacred number 12 in terms of religious nomenclature. I think it's a pretty simple poem, though, when you recognize that she's awed, wonderful. She's blown away by the fact that the woods go from pink to brown. It seems like everything is about, well, what did Emerson's essay call it? Circles. We've given a full lecture at learnstrong.net. I think at 2A the message here is powerful. The cycles of life, the cyclical nature of life, we're going to come back to this again and again with Emily Dickinson, is wonderful for her. It's a wonderful rotation. At 2B, obviously, the personification of nature is quite remarkable. The hills undressed. I mean, if you think about it, and we live, of course, where there's beautiful mountains in the summer, but then by the fall, winter, all those will drop their leaves, and all of a sudden we think of Golden Grove unleaving and all of that, and it's like, and it gets bare. And we even use that term, don't we? Wow, the woods, the hills look bare all of a sudden. Now at 3A, I want you to go back and take a look at learnstrong.net, our thoughts about Emerson's classic essay, Nature, the 1836 offering. Think about that. This poem is from 1858. And Emily knew the work of Emerson, and I think, as we're going to see already, the influence is certainly in this poem. I like to think as well about the Taoist understanding of the Tao Te Ching, and the way in which Lao Tzu will constantly talk and reference about how everything is cyclical, and of course that idea so influential in the poetry of Blake, which was obviously some of the great influences on Emily's work. Finally, at 3B, what about your view of the cycles of nature and the fact that we move from the pink woods to the brown woods and then back to the pink woods again? We cannot help but think about this idea and that last line from Shelley's Ode to the West Wind, if winter come, can spring be far behind? Certainly, I think that idea is being played out here as well. I hope that you can continue to enjoy the way in which Emily will play with words. Thank you.